This question appeared on a video about how to use parameters in Report Builder, and the particular part of the question that grabbed my attention was this bit here. Somebody wants to be able to highlight in a table the search string you've entered in a parameter, including wildcard characters. So just to put that into plain English, I've whipped up a quick example. As this report has a single parameter, I can type in a single wildcard character to return all the films in the list based on the film's title. But if I replace that percentage symbol with a piece of literal text, so let's say the word king, for example, or the 4 characters K-I-N-G, that returns all of the films whose title contains those 4 characters. And it also highlights the location of that string within the film title. Now the way that it does this is by breaking out the full title into 3 separate parts. Any text which appears before the search string itself, including matching the case of the phrase that we're looking for. So sometimes it's a lowercase k, sometimes an uppercase k, and then anything which might appear after the search string. It's a bit of a faff to set up actually, but it was a bit of fun to work out how to make this work. So I'll talk you through the steps through this video. I'm going to assume you already know some of the basics of Report Builder, for instance how to set up a basic report and a table in the first place, and if not, we do have a full tutorial dedicated to teaching you exactly how to do that. I'd recommend starting with part 2 if you just want to learn the basics of creating a simple table. And I'm also going to assume that if you want to follow along, you've got a copy of the Wise Owl Movies database. If not, we've got this video which explains how to install it, and there's a link in the video description which you can use to download the script file that you'll need. I've started by creating a basic report to display the full list of films from the movies database, and if I just run that report to demonstrate, that gives me all 1200 films and their release dates just for a bit of extra information. What I'd like to do is add a parameter to this query so that we can type in a bit of text and find all the films containing that bit of text. So to do that, I'm going to head to the films dataset and right click on it, choose dataset properties, and I'm going to add this as a query parameter. So I'm going to write my where clause into the query box at the end of the select statement. I can say where film.title, and then I'm going to use the like operator and then make up the name of a parameter. So I'm going to say at title text. So the where clause should just look like so. Now I want to avoid my end user typing in wildcard characters. I want to be able to add the wildcard characters on myself. So in front of the parameter name, I'm going to type in some single quotes, a percentage symbol, and then concatenate that to the title text parameter. And then at the end of that, I'd like to concatenate another percentage symbol. So no matter what the user types in, I'll have wildcard characters surrounding that string. So just to demonstrate how that might work, if I click the OK button, that will generate the corresponding report parameter, which is linked to the query parameter. So if I run the report at this stage, I could type in the word king, for example, and that returns all the films whose name contains those 4 characters, or the word star, for example, and you should just find that this works as expected. Now, in order for this basic system to work, we need to divide our film titles into 3 separate sections. So it's any text which appears before the search phrase we've typed in, it's then the search phrase itself, and then any text which appears after the search phrase. So in order for this to work, we have to have this predictable number of sections we can divide our film titles into. That means I want to prevent my end users trying to do things like type in their own custom search strings using multiple wildcard characters. So if I typed in S percentage, W percentage, E percentage, A, for example, trying to find any films with that sequence of characters somewhere within it. First of all, that won't give the user what they want anyway, because we've concatenated those extra wildcard characters to the start and the end of the string. So although it will run and return something, it's not necessarily what the end user wanted. I want to get rid of any additional wildcard characters the user has typed in. And one way to do that, back in the design view, if I right click on my films dataset and choose dataset properties, is to use the replace function in SQL. So in the where clause, I'm going to wrap the replace function around the name of that parameter. So replace within that parameter any percentage symbols that I find with an empty string. So that's a percentage symbol wrapped in single quotes, and then just 2 single quotes together with nothing in between. I can then close the round brackets or the parentheses, click OK. I can run the report, and if I type in a single sensible word like star or king, etc., everything works as it did earlier. But if I start typing in silly patterns like S percentage, W percentage, E, etc., that's not necessarily going to give the user what they want, because all those percentage characters will get stripped out. So that's going to find any films that have got the phrase SWE somewhere in their film title. As it turns out, there aren't any. So that's absolutely exactly what I wanted to achieve. The next step then is to start calculating those three separate sections of the film title. So we've got a bit of a choice to make here. We could add calculated columns to our film's dataset or calculated field using the Visual Basic language in the expression builder in Report Builder. Alternatively, we could add our calculations to the film's dataset itself and the SQL query which underlies it. And because it's slightly easier to demonstrate that in SQL, that's the technique I'm going to use. So I'm going to right-click my film's dataset and choose Dataset Properties, and then I'm just going to copy all of the text from the query box, and then close that query box down, and then head over to SQL Server Management Studio, where I have a blank report waiting for me. Sorry, a blank query, I should say. I'll give myself a blank line or two up at the top and then paste in my query. This currently won't work if I attempt to execute it, and because the title text parameter does not exist in this basic query. So what I'm going to do is declare a variable so that I can test this in SQL Server Management Studio. So I'll copy my parameter name, and then I'll declare a variable by spelling the word declare correctly first of all, and then paste in the name of that parameter. I'll set its data type to the same data type of the column we're going to compare this against. So that's an N varchar column, title. I'm pretty sure I set a limit of 255 characters when I designed that table. And then I'm going to assign a basic string of text. Let's assign the string king. The capital letter N there just indicates that it's an N varchar string. Not strictly speaking necessary, but good practice nonetheless. So having done that, I can execute my basic test query to return a set of films that I can now start calculating the individual title text from. So for the first example, let's build up to calculating any text which appears before the search phrase we've entered. I'll begin by just copying and pasting this replace function into the select list so that we can view what we're calculating step by step. So I'll just paste that in there. And then if I execute the query, it just shows me a single column containing exactly what I have typed in to the parameter search box. What I'd like to do now is establish where that search string sits within the film title. So if I look for the phrase king in the word King Kong, or in the title King Kong, that starts at position number 1. If I search for the phrase king in the Lion King, that's for 8, 9, 10. So king begins at position number 10. So we can identify the position of one string within a larger string in SQL by using a function called charindex. So just in front of the replace function, I'm going to begin a new function, charindex, and then open up some round brackets. I'm going to then take the replace function down to the next line, and then hit the tab key to indent that one space. And then at the end of that line, I'll hit enter again and type in a new comma to move on to the second parameter, and then refer to the column that contains all the text I'm searching in. So the first parameter of charindex is what I'm looking for. The second parameter is what I'm looking in. So if I say title and then close the round brackets, when I execute that query now, we can see it returns the position of the word king in the larger film title. The next step is to return all the characters in the film title which sit to the left of that position. So to begin with, I'm going to just subtract 1 from the result of the charindex function. I'm going to say -1 at the end. So that will tell me how many characters to return from the left-hand side of the string. So if the word king is at the very beginning of the film title, I return 0 characters from the left, resulting in an empty string. If it's the Lion King, I return the 9 characters from the left of the string, so that gives me the lion with the space, and then leaves off the word king. So having done that, we can then wrap the left function around the charindex function. So I'll begin by typing in the word left and then open up some round brackets in front of charindex. I'll then hit enter a couple of times, tab once, and then type in a comma in front of the charindex function. So the second parameter of the left function is the number of characters we want to return, and we're providing that by using the result of the charindex function. I'm just going to tidy up a bit and indent the subsequent 2 lines by 1 space. So I'll highlight them and hit tab, and then I need to close an extra set of round brackets to correspond with the open round brackets for left. And then the first parameter of the left function is the main bit of text we're trying to get our characters from. So that's just the film title. So having done that, I can execute the query now, and that returns all the characters to the left of the search phrase in the film title. Now there is still one way that the user could break our system at this point. If they typed in just a single percentage character in the search string, then what's going to happen is that our replace function will convert that into an empty string, and then we're going to try to find an empty string in the film title, which isn't therefore going to work. If I hit the execute button, the charindex function returns a 0, so it doesn't find an empty string in the film title, and then it subtracts 1 from the 0 to return -1, and then tries to return -1 characters from the left of the title, which isn't going to work. I've got an invalid parameter length passed to the left or substring function. So what I'm going to do is check to see, once I've replaced all the wildcard characters in the title text parameter with empty strings, if that results in an empty string, I'm going to make this column return the full film title. I'll just press Ctrl R to hide the results panel temporarily, and then in front of the left function I'm going to write an if function, so IIF, open some round brackets and then hit enter a couple of times to bring the left function down. I'll hit the tab key and then type in a comma at the beginning, and then highlight all the lines of code below it up to the from clause, and then hit tab to indent them, and then finally close that extra set of closed round brackets to correspond with the new ones I've just opened. Now I'm going to cheat a bit and just copy my replace function. So the condition I'm going to test for in my if function is if I've replaced all the wildcard characters in the title text parameter with empty strings, and the result is equal to an empty string, then what I would like to do is just return the complete film title. Otherwise, I'd like to return what we've previously calculated, all the characters to the left of the search phrase. So if I execute this with a single percentage symbol, or indeed multiple percentage symbols, it really doesn't matter. The result of that column is the full film title. But if I type in a sensible search phrase like KING, I get everything to the left of that string in the film title. Just to tidy up then, I'm going to give this column a sensible name by assigning an alias to it. So at the very end of the expression, I'm going to say as, and then I'll call this one title start, or something along those lines. And then when I execute the query again, it's got a nice sensible column name that we can reference in our report. The next step is to calculate the middle part of the film title, and that corresponds to basically what the user has typed into the search box, replacing any wildcard characters, of course. I suppose a simple approach here would be just to reference whatever the user has typed into the parameter, but that kind of leaves us at the mercy of whatever casing the user has decided to use. If they typed in the word king in all uppercase characters, although the functions would work still to return those various bits of text, if we just referenced what the user had typed in, that would be shown in the same case in the final result. And I'd prefer to match the casing of whatever text is actually in the film title itself. So sometimes it's an uppercase K, sometimes a lowercase k, so I want to match that. So what we're going to do is locate the search phrase in the film title, and then from that position return all the characters equal to the length of the search phrase itself. The basic pattern here is just the same as what we've done with our title start column. So I'm going to begin by copying that column's definition, then head down to the next line, give myself a new line above the from clause, and then just paste in that exact same expression. If I have an empty string in the title text once I've replaced any wildcard characters, I don't want the middle part to return the full film title. What I'd like to do first is return an empty string. I'll just update the title start column name to say title middle. And then if I just enter a wildcard character in my search string and then execute that, we'll see that the middle part of the title now just becomes an empty string. I've got the full film title in the title start column. The next thing I want to do is update the location of the charindex function. So I don't want to go back one character. I don't want to subtract one. I just want to return the actual location of the start of the phrase I'm looking for in the title. So I'll take away the -1. Next, I'm going to change the left function. I'm no longer trying to return characters from the left of the string. I'm trying to return a substring from somewhere within the middle of the film title. So I'll replace the left function with a substring function. So I'm going to find the substring from the film title, beginning at this position here. So beginning at the position of the location of the search phrase in the film title. And then I have to specify how many characters I would like to return. So the third parameter of the substring function is how many characters to return. So being very careful as to where I place my cursor at this point, I'm going to go in between the first two closed round brackets here. I'm going to head down a line and then go back a tab level, type in a comma, and the number of characters I want to return is basically the length of the search phrase. So I'm going to type in a new function, len, and open and close some round brackets. Now it's not necessarily the length of whatever the user has typed in, because that might contain wildcard characters. I want to calculate the length of the replaced version of the parameter, replacing any wildcards with empty strings. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste the replace function inside those new round brackets for the len function. Okay, so if I execute that query again now, we end up with, well, with a single wildcard character typed in, we end up with still an empty column. But if I replace that with a valid search string like king and execute it, I get the word king, but in the correct case, corresponding to how it's spelt in the actual film title. And I can update that to different words and still see the correct result returned. The final column we need to calculate then is the title end, and that's going to correspond to any characters which appear after the phrase we're searching for. To make that work, once again, we're going to locate the beginning of the phrase we're searching for. Then we're going to move to the right the number of characters equal to the length of the search phrase once any wildcard characters have been replaced in it. From that point, we're just going to return everything to the end of the title, and we'll do that by calculating the length of the entire film title. So the good news is you've already written all the code you need to do this. We just need to rearrange it a little bit to make it work. So I'm going to start by copying the entire expression we've just written for the title middle, give myself a new line and then paste that all in, and then update the name of the column to title end. I'm then going to copy the len function, which calculates the length of the search phrase once all the wildcards have been replaced. So that's len and replace and two closed round brackets. I'm going to copy those, and then at the end of the charindex function, I'm going to add on that number of characters. So that will move us from the beginning of the phrase we've searched for to the character sitting immediately after it. I then want to update my len function for the end of the substring, for the final parameter of substring. So I want it to make sure that we find all the characters to the very end of the entire title. So if I just calculate the length of the entire title, it doesn't matter if we overreach, it doesn't matter if the length of the film title is longer than the remaining characters in the string, it will only return characters up to the end of the string. And I've just realised I've gotten rid of a couple of closed round brackets that I didn't intend to. So there's one there for the substring function and one for the if function. Okay, so giving this a quick test, if we execute that with the phrase star, I've got, for Star Wars, I've got two bits of text. The word star is the beginning or the middle, well, both the beginning and the middle, I suppose, and then the remaining part of the text. We've got some with all three, so my luck, or my lucky, it should say, my lucky stars. And then if we change the search phrase in the parameter or the variable at the top, we should find that that works equally well for any string of text we type in. Even if we put in a silly number of wildcard characters, it will get rid of all those and return a sensible set of information. The next step is to copy this query back into our report builder dataset. So we can ignore the declaration of this variable, that was just for testing. I'm going to grab everything from the select keyword all the way down to the bottom of the query, copy that to the clipboard, head back to report builder, right-click the films dataset and choose dataset properties, select all the existing text in the query box and replace it by pasting in what I've just created in Management Studio. If I then click OK, you'll see that those 3 new columns get added to our dataset: title start, title middle, and title end. And I'm just going to begin by putting the title start column into my table. So I'm going to drag that and position it in the middle of those 2 columns, so just after the existing title column. I'll just change the width of that as well and change the column name to say title with highlights, or highlighting perhaps. And then if I execute the query, or run the report I should say, if I type in the word king, it returns all the films beginning with the word king, and the column currently shows me all of the text before the word king in the film title. And changing the search phrase again will give me the relevant bit of text from whichever film title we find. Now I'd just like to build up the rest of the film title, but I don't want to drag the extra columns title middle and title end into extra columns of the table. I want to add them all into the same column. To do that, we can make use of placeholders in Report Builder. So back in the design view, I'm going to start by selecting the cell containing the title start value, and then click in the cell again to make sure I've got the flashing text cursor flashing away there in the cell. I can then head over to the dataset and drag the title middle field and position that just at the end of the title start. I can then do the same thing with title end, and I'm basically just putting together the 3 different bits of the film title so that when I run the report and type in a search phrase, it shows the complete film title in that one cell, but we know that that's been made up of 3 separate parts. So at the moment, all we've managed to do, in a pretty complex and roundabout way, is deconstruct the film title and then piece it all back together again in a separate column. But there was a point to doing it this way, I promise. The point is that when you have multiple placeholders in a single cell in Report Builder, you can format each of those placeholders individually. So I'm going to select my title middle placeholder, then I'll just use some basic font formatting tools on the toolbar up here. I can choose a different font colour for that. Let's go with tomato. And then if I run the report at that stage, whatever search phrase I type in, I will see that word highlighted in the title with highlighting column. So going back to the design view, I could just get rid of the title column there. There's no real reason to display that. I just included that to make sure we were calculating the correct thing. So I can delete that column. I can apply more formatting to that particular bit of text. I can right click on it and choose placeholder properties to get a dialog box summarizing some of the extra font formatting properties. And I can also do the same thing in the properties window there as well. So that should just work quite nicely at this point, I hope. I really hope that it answers the original question as well, otherwise it's been quite a big waste of effort. But hey, I suppose you've learnt some extra things about text or string functions in SQL, if nothing else. So hopefully that's been useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.